Hello everybody and welcome back to RP1. I'm pretty excited about this episode. We get a lot done. As you can tell by the name of it, we're going to be doing 3 flights as well as a rocket launch. So I'm always excited to have a little bit of a variety in it. We're going to be doing some building, but for the most part, a lot of the crafts that we see today are going to be things we've seen before, so it's mainly just going to be slight adjustments on them. I'm also pretty happy to announce, some of you may have seen the post I made, just the regular picture and text posts that YouTube does, that I have been taking some courses to get better acquainted with the editing software, to actually, in the goal to get certified in my particular editing software. And so in that, I've been learning how to utilize the tools a lot better. In this episode, I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that I audio balanced it right. In the past, I've just kind of relied on just the general flat, raising the audio level or lowering it, and sometimes just cutting it and doing it manually. But I figured out how to do it with a little bit more professionalism. So I'm going to take the time going forward, I think, in this channel to make that as good, high quality as I can. Real fast, just to talk about what we're doing, we are building an X-plane that can achieve the 40-kilometer high altitude flight contract, and that is going to be the XP3. I gave it some canards to give it a little bit better handling, but we're going to go ahead and get our pilots into the cockpit, get that out onto the runway, air launched, and get the mission going. And a quick warp to sunrise so we can see where we're going. We're going to launch a little bit closer, 365 kilometers away from the Space Center. So with our launch, we're going to have Heidi Weber in the cockpit, loaded up with a parachute, ready to fly. So I have a handful of new music that I haven't used on the channel very often, and since our flights are basically going to be fairly standard to what we've done so far, I may take more of a backseat to the audio today. If you're wearing with headphones, you may notice that I was able to control the sound of the rocket engine with a little more precision, and very excited to see what I can do going forward. I've never practiced with audio design and audio mixing before, so it was really interesting to learn how to use these tools, and so this was my first video with practice of that. So I hope it came out well. The goal here is just to break the 40-kilometer line. The good news is once we get past that, we will be able to accrue a little bit of science, and that's only made possible by that newly unlocked cockpit in the front. So as you see here, we loaded it up with a crew report, some telemetry analysis, and high altitude flight. However, the telemetry has already been gathered by our sounding rockets, so there's no need. Our apoapsis just passed 40 kilometers, and I actually see on the contracts that we actually have to reach 55 kilometers. This is the high altitude optional. So unfortunately, we ran out of fuel before we could hit that mark. I believe that we could have done it with a little bit more efficient of a flight path, but nonetheless, we are gathering some decent amount of science. It's not going to be a lot in the long run. It'll be much better once we can fly to 40 kilometers and hold it steady for several minutes. As you see there, the high altitude flight requires 21 minutes of flight time to gather 10 points of science. So that's just Kerbalism for you. Science takes time, so that is why we do so many flights today, is we want to try to pick up as much of the science as possible while also achieving the milestones and the contracts. So we are now about to dip below the 40-kilometer mark, in which case our science will stop. But we got 1.4 and 1.7 on the high-altitude flight and the crew report, respectively. So not too bad. Our engines still show like they're burning, but I guess that's just the gases. We are no longer actually propelling ourselves, so we will be gliding our way in. However, we are a little bit farther away from the KSC than I would have liked, and so my 365 was a little generous on our distance. And not much to say as we glide our way in. It's a nice, relatively clear day. We can see the KSC fairly easily approaching us. Even without the waypoint, we could probably guide ourselves in pretty well. And with 90 some odd kilometers away from the KSC, and only going less than 200 kilometers, or less than 200 meters per second, there is not a lot of likelihood that I'm going to make it to the runway. So now I'm just going to try to do my best at a safe water landing, keep Heidi Weber and the cockpit intact, preserve the science. This thing glides very well. It's pretty easy to control. Even without the air brakes, it's slowing down pretty steadily. I am starting to approach the shoreline, so it is a wonder. I might have been able to make it. But instead, I decided to re-engage regular speed time warp and get our parachutes out, just to make sure we don't hit the water with too much force. But just like that, Heidi Weber and her craft are safe and sound. So we're going to pull her home and get them all ready for the next flight. So that added 53 days onto her career time, and we got a decent amount of science from that, bringing us up to 4 points, 4.9 actually in total. Unfortunately, that is not going to be enough to unlock what we want, which is this high-speed flight, and that's going to require 10. So that is when I decided to set out in search of science as much as we can. During this time, I also did some rocketry testing, hoping that I could get some more space science, but unfortunately I was having some troubles with that, and so that's why we leaned in onto our pilots. So now Flight 2, Stuart Kelly, this time in the new XP3. They both had to train for it and take new classes themselves, so hopefully he can handle the new craft and the added pressure of succeeding where Heidi failed. And our apoapsis now past 40. To be honest, I think I might have forgotten about the 55-kilometer milestone. It was an optional contract, but at this point I think I'm going for longevity spent at the high altitude and distance, so we can gather the most amount of science. I believe we changed our distance to be a little bit closer, 350 kilometers, so we should have a much easier time reaching our destination. I adjusted the planet shine levels during our test flight, which is why it was so blown out, so I'll just take a second here to try to change that. I should have just hit reset on all of them, and I probably will at some point, but... Anyways, we come to our approach. We are angled off kilter slightly, and we are actually rather high. I would have liked to be a lot lower during this close to our descent. I do hesitate on that. I should have immediately started pitching down to correct my altitude, but I wait for too long and becomes a situation. My angle of approach was nice and calm. It would have been perfect on any other day, but I was just too high into the altitude, and that's when I start to realize I'm coming in poorly, so I pitched down pretty drastically, and I'm going to start picking up a lot of speed, too much speed to hit the runway with, especially without air brakes. I pitch up hard, hoping to stall out a little bit, kill off some of that horizontal velocity. But in doing so, I only increase my altitude once again to a dangerous height. Neither Heidi Weber nor Stuart Kelly are very proficient in landing. So, once again, we are going to rely on our parachutes, but I greatly underestimate how quickly they're going to deploy, and I end up hanging myself face down for quite a while. But I have the second pair of parachutes, which will hopefully straighten myself out, and they do to some extent, but not well enough. So we rely on drastic measures to keep ourselves from putting all of our downwards pressure on our cockpit, because if that explodes and we kill Stuart Kelly and all the science gathered, then I mean we just can't have that. We're not even going to talk about that. So let's get him down safely and then move on from there. And there we go. Let's go ahead and recover the vehicle and keep going. I do plan on building my planes a little bit more, relying less on the stock parts, stock wings, shapes and things like that. I am going to get back into procedurally building these airplanes myself, so hopefully we'll be able to achieve our contracts a little bit better and fly a little easier. But now we have Heidi Weber, I believe, once again back in the cockpit, once again, aiming for some science, aiming for that 55-kilometer mark, but overall just trying to push forward and keep our program afloat. Thrust to weight ratio over 1 and our meters per second velocity climbing. We're essentially just a rocket, hence the rocket plane, rocket engines, long cylindrical shape, and some control surfaces. I mean, what else do you need? Get my science laid up so I can keep an eye on it. We've got 42 seconds of fuel remaining, and we are about to pass the 40-kilometer mark. Once again, mainly focused on the science gathering. Although, to be fair, I probably could have just gotten some altitude, and that would have given me enough time above 40 as well, but currently I was thinking more like a plane than a rocket. In the next episode, we will actually complete that challenge, and we will probably redesign our plane to get a little bit better performance on our high altitude flights. We also need to continue the jet plane program, or the jet plane part of our program. So we'll be doing that soon. And for all that, I spent barely any time above the 40-kilometer mark, so this flight could have been a little bit more productive. Now just the peaceful act of gliding forward. We finished crew report, so we no longer have that science to do, which is nice. It's one less thing we have to focus on, and a lot more science in our pocket. A little cloudier than before, so we are going to have no visuals on it until we dip below those. For some reason, this IVA is not allowing me to click on those screens. I'm not sure if I'm missing a dependency or not, if it's a bug. I also have Warbird's cockpit on here, but there also is a small graphical glitch on there, so I haven't been doing a lot of IVA flying here in our P1. However, once we get access to different cockpits, and I have a ton of IVA mods on here, so once we get access to IVAs that work, we may dabble in some of that as well. Nothing quite like seeing the world from space through two eyes. And I accidentally hit our stage a little sooner than I would have liked. I was close enough that I probably could have glided most of the way and potentially landed. However, we will once again be going for a soft, safe, watery landing. Heidi, Stuart, y'all need to get better at landing. go back to class, and we'll see you in the next episode. So now with that, Heidi got an additional 29 days. We only have 6 science, or 7.1 in total, so unfortunately we can't get the high-speed science node, which would greatly improve our explain program. So now we are going to turn our sights on the rocketry side of things. We do have the ability to spend that 7 science, however, in more advanced science experiments, and so we are going to take that, hire some researchers to get that science a lot faster. We're going to integrate those experiments into our orbital probe. And the contract that we're trying to go for today is to get our very first advanced biological experiment in orbit. Small little dog or monkey that will unfortunately be a victim to circumstances, as throughout all of our testing there was no way we could actually complete this contract and get the science and the animal back home. So unfortunately this life will be lost in the name of science, but we will learn a lot and it will push us forward, and hopefully this creature will be the last. Anyways, this is a typical launch as always, pitching over 1 degree every 25 meters per second. Quicksilver 2 is only named, it's only up 1 level simply because it is not a return craft, nor is it a basic orbit, so pretty soon we are going to be advancing with better technology. We'll be unlocking better engines and hopefully better avionics soon. But we have new science experiments, so that means we can also just get a regular thing to orbit, because some of these science experiments we can just transmit. We don't actually have to recover. Because it turns out recovery is fairly difficult. Here I am experimenting with the aim camera feature and focusing on different parts of the craft. So hopefully I can get a little bit of practice with that and add a little bit more cinematography to it. I have been practicing with the camera tools mod, but it is a little bit complicated for me. I need to kind of sit down and practice a little bit more. But I'm hoping to bring a little bit better quality to my videos, kind of all around in all sorts of ways. So I hope you appreciate it. I hope you like it. If you are enjoying my channel and you're not subscribed, maybe consider subscribing. I'm trying to improve in many ways, and by seeing that would greatly help. But anyways, we are getting close to our staging, so we are going to start rolling to get a spin stabilization going. And with the cutoff, we separate, let our next stage float forward ever so slightly, so that way when we push forward for our ullage, we don't explode the part behind us and send us flying. In 3, 2, 1. There we go. And that is enough to push all the fuel backwards, which is easily enough to ignite our engine. I probably could have turned down the gimbaling on that. I'm not sure if I could have turned down the gimbaling on that, but if I could have, I probably should have, because it's a little bit wobblier than I would have liked. As you see here, we're kind of straying from our prograde marker, but nonetheless, in my tests, we've strayed from the program marker, and I was still able to manage, so I'm not too concerned. And even if I was, there wasn't really much I could do about it anyways, given that this is a science core, and we have no control. I checked out my solar panels just to make sure that each of them were active in some way. And we do have the cosmic ray and magnetometer scan science experiments active, so those will be transmitting as much as they can as they go. We also have the biological capsule. However, we don't have that science running because we can't actually get it without returning it. We cannot transmit it, and since we have no plans to return this, there's no point in running it. But all we need to do in order to satisfy the contract is have it on us. So with that camera flip, we are now in orbit. We need to have an apoapsis higher than 1500, which we just passed, and a periapsis between 200 and 900, and sitting at 300, we are looking very good. So now we just need to check our stable orbit for 24 hours, which will be several passes around the Earth. Thankfully, the majority of our apoapsis is in sunlight, so our solar panels, while small, should be able to do the best that they can. So in order to save battery, because I'd like to pass the contract more than gather the science. We can always send up another rocket for science. So I decided to kill the science experiments so they don't use the battery, because we do need to have positive charge after the 24 hours. And in many of my tests, that was a deciding factor of whether or not I had to make changes. So with 40 minutes left on the clock, we time warp forward, and with that, we have successfully completed the contract. First biological satellite, which is a required contract for our program, so we're just moving one step forward each time we go. Now I turn the science back on. We still have some electric charge, not a lot, and not enough to keep ourselves sustainable, so we are just going to try to get as much science transmitted as we can, and then once we're done with that, it will just be some space debris that will clear up in a later episode. So yeah, in the next episode, I think we're going to launch another one of these, minus the Advanced Biological Capsule, but just another little orbiting satellite to produce the 18 science that we can get from these two experiments, and maybe whatever else we have left to get. Hopefully we can get some better quality parts with that, which will make returning our crafts a little bit easier, and then we can throw up one of these Advanced Biological Capsule and get some serious amount of science. But we will be doing that in the next one. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP1. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.